Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm Attorney General Schneiderman, and I'm here today with some of my colleagues in law enforcement, including my great partner, Commissioner Joe D'Amico from the New York State Police, Chief of Police Frank Fowler from the Syracuse Police Department. We're also joined by representatives of some of other agencies, local police and sheriff's offices, and the head of my Syracuse Regional Office, Ed Thompson, is also with us. We are here today to talk about a long-term investigation that has resulted in us busting two interconnected drug rings. It was called Operation Horseback, and it was a multi-agency investigation headed up by my Organized Crime Task Force. Perry Kadanoff is here with us. She is the head of the task force and has really been the architect of a lot of these joint operations. And once again, I have to say, it is a great pleasure to experience the seamless cooperation between our Organized Crime Task Force and law enforcement agencies across the state of New York, which are producing results like those we are here to discuss today. These were two related and very large-scale drug trafficking rings that were moving huge amounts of heroin, cocaine, and prescription pills through the Syracuse area for distribution. Our investigators and officers from our partner agencies conducted raids early this morning. We have arrested 34 of 41 individuals involved in those rings. Some of the arrests were in Syracuse, some in the Bronx, Ossining, and Paterson, New Jersey, and the manhunt continues. The individuals are defendants charged in two separate indictments, and you can see that we have two charts reflecting two interlocking drug distribution rings. The crimes include operating as a major trafficker, major counts of major sale of drugs, criminal sale and criminal possession of a controlled substance, and conspiracy to commit those crimes. As alleged in our indictment, 9 members of the same family were involved in one ring, the smaller ring, which is reflected there on the left, and one member of that family was also involved in the second ring. The first drug ring was comprised of at least 19 individuals who shipped heroin from Washington Heights, some of which originated in Rochester and Worcester, Massachusetts, and cocaine from Puerto Rico to Syracuse using the U.S. Postal Service for the shipments from Puerto Rico and traveling by car from Washington Heights. They distributed this in and around Syracuse. Over the course of a 9-month investigation, we seized 29 bags of heroin from the first ring, more than 1 kilo of cocaine, a large quantity of prescription pills, and several $1,000s in cash. A lot of the drugs were being distributed from 2 locations in Syracuse, one at 325 Holland Street and one at the Hilltop houses, which are formerly called the Parkview houses, also here in Syracuse. Our second indictment charges a larger group of people, as reflected on the second board, including 2 who were also a part of the first ring. And we're accusing them of importing heroin from the Bronx and, again, cocaine from Puerto Rico, which was shipped through the U.S. Postal Service, into the Syracuse area for distribution. In the course of our investigation of the second ring, we seized more than 1 kilo of heroin and 3 kilos of cocaine, as well as over $75,000 in cash. Some of the drugs and cash we recovered are on the table here, and you can see the magnitude of the ring. This is only a portion of what we have recovered. We have also recovered in today's arrests guns, including 2 pistol-grip shotguns, one with a laser scope, and a loaded assault rifle. 3 members of these drug rings, Maria Rodriguez, Christopher Ramos, and Jason Pizarro, are charged with operating as a major trafficker. This is the most serious drug crime under New York state law. It's a law I'm proud to have authored as chair of the Senate Codes Committee when I was in the New York State Senate to crack down on drug kingpins who really mastermind plans to profit from poisoning our communities. These 3 individuals charged under that statute face potential life sentences. Our office is committed to cracking down on drug trafficking rings as well as gun trafficking and other criminal enterprises across New York. And since I took office, our Organized Crime Task Force, working really closely with many other law enforcement agencies, has broken up 20 large-scale criminal enterprises. And as with this ring, it is very common when you find a drug ring to find that illegal guns are also a part of the operation. These rings have spanned every major city in the state. We have made well over 400 felony arrests, and this work continues. The members of these drug rings are inevitably and pretty much always violent. They poison our communities with drugs that are both addictive and deadly. New York has seen an uptick in heroin overdoses in particular, and the whole Northeast United States is actually experiencing a surge in both heroin use and heroin overdoses. I have to note that in addition to busting drug gangs, our office has also created what's called the Community Overdose Prevention Program, or COP, which uses forfeiture funds from taking down gangs to equip law enforcement officers across the state with a heroin antidote that actually reverses the effect of an overdose, can stop someone from dying. So we're giving some of the money seized from criminal enterprises to police departments to give addicts a second chance to turn their lives around. At the same time, we're absolutely committed to doing whatever we can to cut off the supply of addictive drugs and getting these violent drug distributors and drug gangs off our streets. I want to thank all of our partner agencies, which include federal, state, and local agencies that have worked with us on Operation Horseback. They are incredibly dedicated, and their commitment and professionalism is making New Yorkers safe. So I want to thank them for that. And now I'd like to introduce one of those partners, someone who's worked with me on many of these investigations, and he and his team really do work seamlessly with our operation, and it's a very productive relationship for the people of the state of New York. State Police Superintendent D'Amico. Yeah.
Thank you, General. Good afternoon. Once again, the New York State Police, Syracuse PD, and the Attorney General and the Organized Crime Task Force are here to announce that we've shut down another major drug operation, this one right here in central New York. The individuals arrested today were responsible for bringing large quantities of heroin and cocaine into neighborhoods in Oswego, Cortland, Onondaga, and Cayuga counties over the last year. And while the dealers comprised two separate drug trafficking organizations, there were a number of individuals who cross over between both. As you heard, they used the U.S. Postal Service as a way to ship their cocaine from Puerto Rico, and they transported heroin from places like Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York City by any means they could, vehicles with traps, buses, trains, and in one case, a dealer used his own livery operator's license and his taxi to move narcotics. In another case, a dealer drove a car barely worth $1,000 while he had $65,000 in his pocket. Husband and wife team appeared typical, working at a youth boxing camp and a property management company in New York City, but they supplemented their income by distributing large amounts of cocaine and heroin on the side. They solicited their adult daughter to help them transport stuff, and they actually had, as you heard the Attorney General say, 9 members of their family were involved in this drug operation. The drugs peddled here in central New York neighborhoods, places like the Hilltop Apartments and Holland Street, polluting our kids, took place everywhere from street sales to fast food restaurants to gas stations, and unfortunately there were no shortage of buyers. And as you've heard a lot recently, and I just want to underscore something that the Attorney General said, heroin use is on the rise, and we're seeing it in all communities across New York, in our inner cities and in the suburbs. And the reason why it's a problem is that it's cheaper, more readily available than pills and other drugs, so a lot of people are turning to it, and it's killing them. Heroin is such a powerfully addictive drug that many of the users who start off are addicted within weeks. Many overdose and die. Take a look at the drugs on this table and just picture what would have happened if this would have made it into our communities and into our kids' hands. You know, we're talking about people, kids, grandparents, people who have addictions up to 50 bags of heroin a day. It doesn't discriminate. New York State Police remains committed to working with our partners in law enforcement to identify these dealers, shut down their operations, and we want to send a loud and clear message to anyone dealing these dangerous and deadly drugs that we're not going to tolerate them. We're going to find them. And the word partnership is very important. As you see, we stand up here all together because all of our agencies are good at what we do, but as a team, we're great at what we do, and we're going to keep fighting until we get this stuff out of our communities. I just want to thank Attorney General Schneiderman for his continued leadership and his efforts in combating these dangerous drugs in our communities. And as you heard, in addition to prosecuting criminals, the Attorney General was instrumental in providing that life-saving drug naloxone to so many first responders. And I could speak for us. We've used it 17 times, and we've saved 12 individuals. So it works. It's a fantastic drug. I also want to thank Perry Kadnoff, the Deputy Attorney General in charge of the Organized Crime Task Force, her great team of investigators and prosecutors, particularly Jim Mindell, who did this case, and Senior Investigator Tom Wolf, his team, Chief Frank Fowler, and the great people over at Syracuse PD and our other partners. And I'd surely be remiss, and I have been in the past, so I'm going to make sure I hit it this time, if I didn't recognize the work of our own people in the state police, the Community Narcotics Enforcement Team, the day in, day out great work, the dedication, the leadership of Major Wayne Olson and Captain Bill McAvoy, and Investigator Sabrina Vasquez, who worked so hard on this case. And lastly, an assist from the Special Investigations Unit. So I thank all of you for all that you do. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the Chief of Police for the Syracuse Police Department, Chief Frank Fowler.
Good afternoon. Let me start off by commending the members of the Organized Crime Task Force. This is a clear example of how a collaborative partnership can work and successfully take drugs off the street and put bad guys where they belong. As you all know, heroin has been poisoning our community, and the problem was getting worse. And I think that this will go a long way to help us to solve that problem. We will continue to work very closely with the Organized Crime Task Force and the New York State Police. And I'd like to personally thank the Attorney General for once again returning to the city of Syracuse and assisting us in our efforts to fight crime. As you all know, law enforcement agencies around this state and the country, for that matter, are getting smaller and smaller, and it's become extremely important for us to join forces. As the superintendent said, we're great when we work together. We're good as we stand alone, but we're great when we work together. And this is a clear-cut example of us working together to bring together a very successful case. And once again, I'd like to commend the men and women that worked very hard on this case and keep up the good work. Thank you all.
Thanks. Thank you.